Alright, technically starting a few minutes early, but don't think there's necessarily a reason to wait. Let me know if you guys can hear me, just want to confirm. Nice, okay, cool. I'll stay on the default screen, whatever we're calling this, for until the technical time of the stream, and then we'll get into the actual recap. Lopez somehow fought even worse this time around? Yeah, for sure. The road to UFC fights were slower than I expected, honestly. The last one was chaotic, just had really low fight IQ, so that was fun. The first two were a little weird. Lopez was trying to be technical, it just made him look trash. Yeah, pretty much. That's the simplest way of putting it. There's some other stuff we'll get into, but yes. Was no one impressed with Lopez's kicking game? I mean, no, not really. Why? This card was stinky? I mean, it wasn't terrible, but like, I think what was weird is we had a lot of weird momentum killer fights. Like, we have like Lou versus Silangrambo was not a great fight because a lot of it was just clinch wrestling. Then Nakamura Slay, okay, decent fight. We got a finish. Ben versus Kim, decent fight, even though low fight IQ, a lot happened at least. And then like, okay, Khan Offley versus Yiza starts out really solid, and then in round 3 just turns into a sleeper, and that kind of kills the momentum of the fight, even if it was like objectively a decent fight. Then, okay, fun fight between Mikhailov and Elliott, and Mikhailov gets the finish. And then Finney is Finney. And then Rouston, despite technically a dominant performance, like underperforms, but we'll get to all that stuff. Volk being less jab heavy was good. I wouldn't say he was less jab heavy. He definitely jabbed a lot. BSDR goat, yeah, valid. We were so overexposed to him. Then he's the worst signing of all time. I have to agree. Yeah. I thought he was tagging Volk quite a bit with kicks. I mean, he landed a few low kicks, but it wasn't anything overly substantial, in my opinion at least. But the card was decent. Yeah, I would say it was decent. I wouldn't say it was quite like pay-per-view or whatever we're calling it now, quality. Thoughts on people thinking Lopez won? I mean, they're just objectively stupid. Main card at least didn't watch the prelims, fair enough. Like 10 people had their house on BSD, it felt like it, yeah. I thought BSD versus Hooker could have been stopped about a minute earlier. Yeah, we will get into that. You still have Silva versus Ilya 50-50, or is your mind changed and why? I have Ilya a little bit higher chance now, but I still think Silva would have a chance. We've also into Sherrick cardio is ridiculous. Yeah, that was... We'll get into it. That's some 50-45 Volk, we'll get into it. Love you, Oracle. Thank you, I appreciate it. Shout out to BSD, he got the finish and stopped DC's obsession with Dan's body kicks valid. Alright, we're at 45. We will get into the breakdown. We'll do it a little bit slowly just in case people are like kind of trickling in here. I don't think anyone cares too much about the early prelims anyway, so if they miss that, that is okay. So starting with Lawrence Liu versus Sulan Grombo, I will say outright, I personally thought this was a robbery. You could see that Sulan Grombo had a larger number of strikes, and even besides that, his strikes were much heavier. So even though Liu had like the takedowns, he only really had control time with it and kneeing the thigh a few times. He didn't like threaten submission, he didn't really land ground and pound, so I thought it was relatively clear for Sulan Grombo, but you do have to know as the fighter in this situation that if you make it look close, things can happen with the judges. Like, so unfortunately, I don't think Liu has any real potential in the UFC. I would have been more excited to see Sulan Grombo given his age. He had a lot of time to grow and he could have definitely evolved. But it is what it is. Liu has the contract. Sulan Grombo will probably get the UFC contract on the next season, I would assume. And yeah, we'll see what happens. People can always rewind if they want. Yes, that is very true. Tired of people calling Zeev Ragnar. He's clearing mini Yuri Prohaska. Fair. Okay, so Keiichiro Nakamura versus Sebastian Slay was a very weird fight. A lot of people were like, oh, Slay is looking really good, but I did not agree. I just thought that Nakamura genuinely was not throwing a single punch for like the first round, and then he started throwing a few in the second round. And it's very easy to look good against an opponent who's just standing in front of you and doing nothing. Nakamura seems to have woken up in the third round. I guess like the realization that he needed a finish did it for him. But yeah, he is definitely the vastly better fighter, which we saw as soon as he started fighting. It seemed like he really got frozen by the moment and was nervous to throw, because he's rarely low volume. Like if we look into his previous fights, for example, like 88, how many did he throw? I remember him throwing a fair amount. Yeah, it's 215 strikes thrown in this fight. So obviously he's not a low volume guy normally. Here he got the finish early, so that's a bit different. So I do think he will overperform compared to what he showed here in the UFC, but he definitely has a lot of stuff to fix, because that was not a spectacular performance outside the third round, to say the least. Hey, HB. He injured his left hand. I mean, fighters get injuries in fights all the time, though. It's just like, what does it matter? You still have to throw, right? If you're going to throw with your right hand more, then throw with your right hand more. Just throw something. Like, if you don't take the chance, you're not going to win the fight. And to be fair, in his case, he did eventually take the chance, so credit there. But a lot of fighters will do it where they'll just fall behind, and even if you had an injury, it doesn't matter. It's not going to get you the win. Anyways, on to Damar Fan versus Sang-woo Kim. So, Fan or Fan, I still don't know which it is, looked significantly better than his previous fights. I will say that. His striking was far more on point, and his wrestling defense was significantly better. It's almost to the extent that is making me think maybe he had some ridiculous injury going into his previous fight, because he just looks so ridiculously better here. That being said, his cardio is still very questionable. And if Kim had a higher fight IQ, he definitely could have gotten the third round finish, because he had Fan hurt a few times and they would always just clinch afterwards instead of just continuing to throw to the body. It was a very weird situation. Fan has a pretty high ceiling in my opinion, so I do think that he could do well in the UFC, especially if he continues to evolve. But I do feel like in this specific fight, Kim could have finished him with a bit of a better fight IQ here. Nakamura got hurt early. It doesn't matter. You still have to throw, though. Like, yeah, I understand if you take a minute to reset or something. It's just, you can't not do anything. You will not win the fight that way. Anyways, on to Khan Offley versus Yiza. So, to get the controversy out of the way for those of you who haven't seen my story, I thought that this was a relatively clear draw. I can certainly understand giving the fight to Yiza as well, because rounds 1 and 3 were very close. I thought Offley just edged rounds 1 and 3, but you could definitely argue either of them to Yiza. So I was very surprised that this ended up being a majority decision to Offley. Like, round 2 was literally what you look for a 10-8. It's just, like, what else did you want him to do to score that a 10-8? My only question was, would that be a 10-8 or a 10-7? I don't think it was quite enough to qualify for a 10-7, but that was the question in my opinion, not is it a 10-8. So that was ridiculous. Like, people are saying like home field advantage was rigged. That's probably the only fight here where I would 100% agree that it felt like it. Anyways, moving on to Miklev versus Oban Elliott. So this fight went pretty much exactly how... I'm glad I had a good read on it, right? So Elliott is the technically more proficient fighter. The problem for Elliott is he is utterly talentless, and that is going to sound rude, and there's no way around that. But the reality is I could see Elliott works very hard. I think his technique gets better fight to fight, but he's not naturally good at anything. He has no power in his hands. He doesn't have great cardio. He doesn't have like great strength. He isn't very fast. He doesn't have a good reach. So it's like Elliott's one of these guys who will beat people who don't work hard enough or just also have zero talent, but he will never beat guys at a reasonable level because of his complete lack of talent. So yeah, even in round 1 where Elliott having a much more speed than Mikhailov, because Mikhailov is very slow, to be fair, was evident. Mikhailov just had to like touch him once and it dropped him. And it was barely a grazing strike that caught him. So yeah, with round 2, I mean, once Mikhailov found the takedown, he was able to lock up the choke so easily. It's just the grappling discrepancy was wild. And I did know that. Mikhailov is a very good grappler, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, I was trying to think about it in terms of what you would do if you were Elliot's coaches from here. And I don't know, because he's just never going to be that good, to be honest. So it's a tough situation for him because he clearly wants it, but he's just not someone who has the ability. Obana's just not UFC level God style and game plan. I think the game plan was fine, but it's just his talent holds him back. What can Elliot do to become a contender? I genuinely don't know. He would have to like try to completely rework his style because of the fact that it's just he doesn't have the attributes, right? So he has to somehow figure out some situation where he has the advantage and maximize that. But I don't even know what it is. Anyways, so yeah, I mean, somewhat solid performance from Mikhailov. The speed discrepancy is still a little bit concerning, but if he dials in his striking a little bit, given his natural power and his ability once he gets the fight to the ground, I could see him doing somewhat well in this division. Now to the most embarrassing fight of the card, and yes, I still think this is more embarrassing than Teixeira versus Tuivasa, not gonna lie. Malkoun versus Finney was a fight of who is stupider and worse at fighting. Finney is, forget UFC level. I don't know if he's even regional level. And I don't know why he decided he was going to not shoot a single takedown and just eat jabs. But yeah, that was apparently his game plan. And then Malkoun decided to jump to his back to attempt a bad guillotine, not finish with ground and pound on top, somehow get rocked in the 3rd round, and I don't know what Malkoun was doing either. Like, yeah, it was on paper a very dominant performance from Malkoun. The fact that he couldn't get that finish is just embarrassing. Like, this is one of these fights where you should genuinely just cut both of them because they are both terrible and have zero future in this sport. Yeah, I have nothing else to say. I never want to see Torres Finney fight again. I really hope they cut him tomorrow. We'll see. Malkoun will obviously get another fight, and like, he's not a terrible fighter, right? He can fight. He's just never going to go too far in this sport, in my opinion, at least. Trash versus garbage matchup, yeah, agreed. Hope they cut Finney, 100%. Anyways, Ralston versus Brundage was a fight that kind of disappointed me because I was hoping Ralston was going to be a little bit better. It was a very predictable result, but the way Ralston defended when Brundage blitzed at him was like, oh god, someone who has like an ounce of talent or willpower is just going to catch you while blitzing because you're so open to overhands. So Ralston has a lot to work on. I'm not going to say he can never be good. I mean, he has ability for sure, but that was not the performance I wanted to see against Cody Brundage. I don't even know who they're going to give him next. So the UFC will probably go one of two ways with this. They'll either be like, oh, you struggled with Cody Brundage, you're never going to be anything, let's just feed you to someone else who could take your hype. Or they'll be like, okay, maybe you have talents, but Brundage isn't as bad as his record suggests or whatever, so we're just going to feed you another can now and hope you perform better there, and then test you again later. So we'll see which they decide. I have a feeling they'll go towards the latter, but you never know. Billy Elikana versus Junior Tafa. Oh, yeah, so Robson has negative head movement. Yeah, agreed. Tim has that stinky CKB style. Yeah, except like an even worse version of it, where his footwork isn't great either. Anyways, yeah. So for Elikana versus Tafa, I thought Elikana was out when the overhand hit him. The way Elikana fell, I just thought the fight was about to be over instantly. He had some of the fastest recovery to a flush overhand I think I've ever seen. That was absolutely insane. So good on him to get out of trouble and just jump on the takedown immediately to survive that situation. Elikana's striking defense does definitely leave something to be desired. He kind of just leans back in non-committal ways where he is there to be hit if you follow through on your strikes and put combos together. but he is good at adjusting mid-fight and figuring out what he needs to do. Going into round 2, obviously Tafa has pretty much zero cardio. So once you get him to round 2, fight gets a lot easier. Elikana was able to stun him on the outside, get him down, and then the rear naked choke was right there. So fair play to Elikana. He had adversity, worked through it. Definitely want to see some improvement in the striking defense, though, in his next fight, because not everyone's going to gas out in 5 minutes like Junior Tafa will. My parlay flashed before my eyes, seeing Anna got nuked. Valid, yeah. Salkhild versus Malarkey. Even though, right, everyone's gonna be like, oh, he just walked through Malarkey. You just got taken down by Jamie Malarkey, dude. Like, what are we doing? I like find more and more reasons to not believe in Salkhild as a prospect. He just did not look good. Like, Malarkey sucks, right? You should be absolutely decimating Malarkey. I don't know. It's like, I thought this would be one of those fights where I would be like, oh yeah, I just can't take anything from it because Malarkey's a can and Salkhild's going to knock him out with the first punch, basically. And then Salkhild's like whiffing on things, looking like he has absolutely garbage striking defense, like losing his balance, getting taken down. Like, what are you doing? So Salkhild's like, it depends who they give him next, but I think he's very live to lose his next fight because he just seemingly does not improve, even though he has ability. Okay, so then the second most embarrassing fight on this card, of course, being Teixeira versus Tuivasa. I don't know how Teixeira did not manage to finish Tuivasa in round 1. That was absolutely insane. You have the back and you're able to hit him for 3, I think it was actually like closer to 4 minutes, and you just can't do anything as someone who should have a massive physicality advantage here because you are a massive heavyweight and you're not just like 200 pounds of fat like Tuivasa is. I don't know, like, Pallison is one of these guys you would think would be a great heavyweight just because of his attributes and such. But then when we watch him fight, it's just, wow, there just isn't much there. But, yeah, especially, and then going into round 3, it's like Tuivasa just decided that he didn't want to save his own job. Like, Tuivasa had him pretty much knocked out and then just didn't do anything. So, just cut them both. Cut the whole division at this point. Like, heavyweight is so bad, and the majority of the fights going to decision now is like completely removes the allure of the division. Because even though the division always sucks skill for skill, in the past it would be like, okay, at least we're going to have dramatic finishes here, so it'll be somewhat fun. Now it's just like the only people you're finishing are Derek Lewis because he's Derek Lewis and will just quit in like whenever the first round ends, basically. So. Yeah, this is just, I don't know. I hate heavyweight so much in modern UFC. And they better cut Tuivasa at this point. Like, how many losses is this in a row? Let's see. 1, 2. Yeah, 6 losses for a row for Tuivasa. Just really not. Yeah, I don't know how he was ever getting wins in the UFC. It's genuinely crazy. Teixeira being a black belt is insane. Yeah, that felt like a Happy Meal black belt, not gonna lie. Anyway, on to Rufi versus Fiziev. So, a lot of people, I think this was my most controversial prediction, was the Rufi knockout, because a lot of people have a very overinflated opinion of Fiziev. And I get it, he's fun, right? I like watching him, I enjoy his fights, nothing against him at all. The reality is he's not that good. His striking is very rigid, he doesn't adapt at all. He doesn't know how to like counter. It's just, he has a very limited skill set and it looks pretty. It's a very pretty looking style, but he has very few strengths. Like, his last knockout was a very long time ago. I think it was Moicano, if I remember correctly, which was like how many years ago now? Oh no, he technically got RDA in round 5, right? Yeah. 4 years ago. That was his last knockout. So it's just, Fiziev doesn't have much power, he doesn't have great cardio, he doesn't have great adaptability, so he's just one of those fighters who's fun, but again, this is probably as far as he goes. I think he'll be kind of a gatekeeper who can have fun fights, and that is pretty much it. Fiziev is like Chandler Light. Yeah, in some ways, yeah. Ishiri Magic Gamrot. Yeah, that would be fun. I think that if it's a 3-round fight, he has a chance against Gamrot for sure. If it's a 5-round fight, he's going to draw in the later rounds. So it's actually almost to his benefit now that they're both like very far from title contention now, because he might get a 3-round fight where he can just stuff the early takedowns and gas in round 3, but still win like a 29-28 or something like that. I was getting clowned for picking Rufy by TKO. Fiziev makes it too close to the guys that aren't good. Yeah, agreed. And people weren't looking at the specific match. People are like, oh, Rufy went to decision with Lontop, right? It's like, okay, Fiziev is not as durable as Lontop. It doesn't matter. So it's just like Rufy is not going to get gassed out in this matchup because Fiziev is not going to put a crazy pace on him. That's just not how he fights. So good performance from Rufy. He still has a ton of potential in my opinion. He was using the jab very well. I would have liked to see him be a little bit higher volume because you're not just going to knock out everyone as we saw in the BSD fight. But yeah, still good performance, good step up in my opinion, and I am excited to see who he fights next. BSD versus Hooker is a fight that has me extraordinarily confused, and I feel like everyone has the same feeling as me whenever they watch a BSD fight at this point, because BSD looked kind of terrible in round 1. I don't know what he was doing. Like, even though he was technically up and technically landing a lot of significant strikes and such, it's just like his pressure, he wasn't really pressuring. It's like he was trying to be more patient and then time the takedowns, but he still wasn't timing the takedowns great, and it didn't seem like they had a way to escape the guillotine and still get the takedown. Like, he was gator rolling out of the guillotine, which is valid, sure, but he was gator rolling to the side. So unlike when Arman did it and he still ended up on top, BSD would fall off to the side whenever he gator rolled and then have to reshoot. So it was a very strange, not game plan, but like issue, I guess you would say, where I don't know what they were intending to do in round 1. Maybe just try to get like reads, I guess, but BSD is not a fighter who really like punishes reads heavily. So that is a round that really confused me. Round 2 made a lot more sense. BSD just started putting the pressure on to the extent that it made Hooker panic shoot. So a lot of people were like asking me, why did Hooker shoot a takedown? He was getting lit up in the pocket, which is something I'm glad I read somewhat well in this fight, and then had to shoot to escape that. And then, of course, we had the finishing sequence. I have no idea what Herb Dean was doing. He wanted to watch Hooker die. That could have been stopped like 3 to 5 times before that. It was absolutely insane. So BSD gets a second round TKO. I'm curious how much these were at distance. Yeah, so almost everything was on the ground even in round 2, which is crazy. I did feel like BSD was doing more work on the feet. Maybe it was just like the 6 strikes or whatever it was seemed like a lot. But whatever the case, yeah, BSD definitely put on the pressure, and that changed the fight dramatically going into round 2. I don't know how far he can necessarily go or not from here. I thought BSD was injured, man. He looks so slow and sloppy on the feet. Yeah, I somewhat agree, because it's weird. Like, some fights he looks really slow, and some fights he looks very fast and like technically capable on the feet. Like, his stance was weird. He was not confident in striking like he normally is. Something was very strange. I don't know who would win in Arman versus BSD. I think as of now, I have to lean towards Arman realistically. I would love to say BSD, but I'm going to need to see a bit more from him than this. Not that it was like a bad performance, because it was objectively speaking a good performance. It just felt off. I don't know. It was a very weird fight. Anyways, maybe I'll rewatch it and see something different, but I don't know. John Silva losing to Diego Lopez was such a fluke. Yeah, I agree, but we'll get to that in a second. UFC will probably put on Arman versus BSD and hope to God BSD wins. Valid. All right, so moving on to the main event, right? I got nervous going into this fight that my read was going to be wrong. I am very glad that it worked out pretty much exactly how I expected. So this is again going to sound rude, but I think it's just the truth. As fun as Diego Lopez is, and as talented as he is, he's not a very good fighter. Skill for skill, I mean, his grappling sure is good, right? His striking is just not. Like, he he doesn't seem to know what to do against higher level opponents, and he kind of just prays he finds a big shot at some point. Like, yeah, Rufy is low volume, right? But he's going to get reads and then eventually look for the big shot with that. Lopez is just praying the big shot opens up for him. And this time, even more than last time. And he was saying before this fight, like, oh, he needed to be more patient and not just look for one big shot and all of that stuff. And it's like, okay, that's all in good, but that's not going to work when you need to create an opening against someone who's generally a relatively sound fighter, or defensive fighter, I should say. And I also assumed that in the first fight, Lopez read the whole jabbing issue from Volk and was able to catch him because of that. And to be clear, Volk was doing the same thing in this fight. And I was like, oh, okay, I assume maybe round 2, round 3, Lopez is going to try to time that again. What I eventually realized is Lopez never got a read on anything. Lopez straight up actually just got lucky in the end of round 2. The situation just created itself without him intentionally doing anything. Like, I don't think Lopez knows anything about reads, in all honesty, because nothing he did made any sense. The way Volkanovski fought, he assumed that Lopez was going to switch up his defensive combos. So Volkanovski didn't enter with the overhand as much here. He more so stayed on the outside and then waited for Lopez to make a mistake before punishing, which, while not the most entertaining strategy, was definitely the most effective strategy because he put himself at very little risk. The one time where Volkanovski got hurt was when he lunged really far in for absolutely no reason. Sometimes he makes a random weird mistake like that, but luckily for him, it's very few times per fight, to say the least. But yeah, overall, I thought it was a pretty dominant performance. I personally had it 50-45. 49-46 is fine. Either of those scorecards work, in all honesty. Lopez, I think this would be the time you just do Lopez versus Silva too. Because I think the reality is, especially after what we saw today, Lopez is not evolving at all. Silva, if he doesn't make a stupid mistake again, which I don't think he will, should absolutely walk through Lopez. And I think this time he can probably put Lopez away. Because again, Lopez is so much less dynamic than someone like Allen, and is so much less fundamentally sound, that Silva can kind of just put volume on him until he finds the reads and the perfect shot to put him out. So yeah, I don't think that Lopez is really going to get another win until he fights someone much lower level again. Lopez still can't cut the cage. Yeah, Lopez has zero footwork at all. It's actually terrible. BSD said he did the best he could considering how he felt. Yeah, you're right. He said something was off in camp, right? I'm forgetting what he said, but that was definitely an indication. Lopez trains at a gym with Grasso and Aldana. Notice how none of them have ever cut off a cage in their life. Doubt he improves his footwork. Yeah, that gym just seems to suck, to be honest. Volk looked terrible as well. I wouldn't say Volk looked terrible. I think Volk was being pretty cautious, but I don't think that he was bad. What would Silva have done if he faced Volk? I think he really would have tried to time the jab. What made you change your mind on Silva versus Ilya? Was it Silva's power? I mean, I haven't changed my mind much. It's just a few percentage difference. Silva just gets hit a little bit too much for me to be comfortable with him there. What exactly did Lopez train for 9 months? Absolutely no change in game plan is embarrassing. Yeah, I think this shows even more that the spinning elbow against Silva was just like a Hail Mary fluke, right? That probably happens like 1 out of 10 times. And I mean, sometimes you get those probabilities, it happens, right? But Lopez just prayed something showed up, and it showed up that fight. If it doesn't show up against other opponents, it seems like it's not going to happen. Volk has the same entries to land the short hook in the pocket 500 times versus Lopez in both fights. Need him to retire before fighting Silva. Yeah, Silva would do bad things to him, seems like. Diego should move gyms 100%. Do you think Lopez would find success if he just fought like Benoit? To an extent, but he did kind of try that in the Volk 1 fight, and he just got countered really bad, which is why he didn't try it here. The thing about Benoit is that his pocket game, or I should say his clinch game, is a lot more advanced than Lopez's, so people can't like risk missing wildly on Benoit, because then he'll just get to the clinch and start blasting elbows in your face, and it's very hard to deal with that. Also, Selkild called out Ziam thoughts. Oh, Ziam would kill him. Like, that would be... I hope that the odds are somewhat close to even, because Ziam would absolutely annihilate him. What do you think about Guru saying Lopez could have won? Could have won, like, in the sense of if he fought differently, or could have won score-wise? Because if he's saying score-wise, I have no idea what fight he just watched. If he's saying ability-wise, I mean, yeah, he has a ton of attributes. I don't disagree there. Who's next for the title shot? Murphy. Probably the winner of Avloy versus Murphy. Diego versus Yair, I guess, is the move. I have a feeling the UFC is really going to push to do Silva versus Lopez too, because they need Silva to avenge that loss to push Silva. Selkild won't be ranked unless they give him Dariush or something. I think even Dariush should beat him, to be honest. I think Lopez could have success at 155. No. 145 has a notorious number of point fighters, which is very good for Lopez with his terrible defense. You go to 155 where people can hurt you a lot more, and not just because the extra 10 pounds, because the styles are different. He's going to get put out bad. Merab or Volk? I'd lean towards Volk. 155, Lopez won't have size. Yeah, true as well. Guru said it was 3-2 either way. He does this every time he gets a pick wrong. Oh, okay. Then it's just bias, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it was not 3-2 either way. It was 4-1 or 5-0, and I lean towards 5-0. Can you tell what Selkild's flaws are? I mean, his defense is abysmal, right? His defense everywhere is just straight up abysmal. Rufy should fight Patty. That would be fun, yeah. I'm fine with that. Lopez fans are annoying. I mean, I think, to be fair, pretty much all fighters have a kind of annoying fan base, unfortunately. What's your favorite fast food? Depends on the day. Yeah, it really depends. I wouldn't say there's a consistent one. Volk versus Mavzar and Murphy would be your early predictions be. I'd take Volk against either of them. I think Murphy's a harder matchup for him, even though I do lean towards Mavzar to beat Murphy. UFC is done with Lopez? Yeah, 100%. They're just going to use him to build people now. It's awfully too small to move up to 155. His chin at 145 is just not there. I think he's too small and doesn't really have the style to. Umar or Song? I'd lean towards Song, actually. Diego has a good chin. If Silva stays within himself, does he batter him or does he finish him? I think in a 5-round fight, I could see Silva getting like a round 4 finish against Diego just from accumulated damage. Okay, so just quick recap. Let's see how many things I got right or wrong. So I technically got this wrong, even though I consider a robbery. So 0-1, 1-1, 1-2, technically 1-3, but it should have been a draw. 2-3, 2-4, so after a rough start. But then 3-4, 4-4, 5-4, 6-4, 7-4, 8-4, 9-4. So we come out with a pretty decent prediction rate there. Early fights were definitely the killer here. In terms of betting, I mean, those of you in the Discord know, we did ridiculously well today. So even the default strategy was up like 16.5 units. Most of us were up far more than that. I did an Instagram post on it, but a lot of like long shot parlays hit. Unfortunately, not the lottery. We'll hopefully get that one next time, but we made a ridiculous amount of money. So if you guys are still not in the Discord for whatever reason and you are betting, do consider signing up for that. The link to the website to sign up is in the Instagram bio if you guys are interested. You lean Song Yadong against Umar? Yeah, of course. I mean, Umar is just so terrible defensively on the feet at this point that unless he could take down Song instantly, which I don't think he can, especially seeing how much he struggled against Figgy, he's just going to get chinned. I made $8,000 in the Discord today, guys. That's crazy too. I'm glad to hear that one. When I see you guys make stuff on the individual slips, I never know like what the totals are, but it's definitely good to hear that it was that much. I think Lopez needs to train with Volk because the physicality is there, but the IQ isn't. Yeah, I mean, he could try. What's the age requirement on the site? I think my TOS has it at 16, right? Technically. Obviously, like the betting age in whatever jurisdiction is different. So obviously abide by whatever your local rules are in that sense. But yeah, you can access the website, my website, if you're 16 or older. Would Rufy violate Patty, or would the DDP rush be Rufy's downfall? Yeah, Rufy would knock out Patty. Why do you not post on TikTok? Just curious. I do post on TikTok. Yeah, I mean, you can find me on TikTok if it's. Let me find. It's the Octagon Oracle .talk on there. How did you score the main event? I had it 50-45 for Volk. I could understand 49-46, but honestly, I didn't see a round that I would have given to Lopez. I share the same sentiment if Yudong versus Umar were to fight. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, it's just a logical take at this point. Yuri and Lopez similarities? No, I don't think so. I think Yuri is much more calculated than Lopez is. Would you like to see Silva versus Volk? Yes, I would. My state is lame. Gotta wait 2 more years. Oh, that's unfortunate, yeah. Lopez going southpaw was really smart. Thought his team was trying to emulate the Islam 2 game plan. I mean, that only works if, like, you're blasting kicks to the body and the head. I mean, otherwise it doesn't really do anything, though. Tyra versus Van, what's your prediction? I have to pick Tyra there. Silva or Volk? I'm still going to pick Silva. I'm really liking Billy Alicana recently. He was fun. He just needs to increase his striking defense on the back foot a little bit. I think the first round could have been either way. Personally, had Volk, though. I thought the first round was actually pretty clear. I think it was round... I forget if it was round 2 or 3. There was one slightly close rounds, but I still thought it was pretty clear for Volk. I thought that the knockdown outweighed the wobble in the third. The thing is that Volk recovered so quickly from the knockdown that I would say the wobble was more of a damaging strike. And then even if it was moderately close, Volk landed a lot more in the round anyways. Any major takes I missed? Nothing crazy. Finney and Malkoun should both be cut. We should cut the entire heavyweight division, that type of stuff. Do you think BSD would maul Charles, or would Charles give him a wake-up call in the grappling? It really depends on what BSD's game plan is. Because if he does not grapple with Charles, I do think BSD wins. But if he shoots a takedown, he's in trouble. So now that the fight is over, there's another thing I want to add is that Lopez's camp went to Australia 4 weeks early, away from their own camp, and only had 5 guys there. It seemed weird. 4 weeks is a little bit extreme, but I know a lot of guys do like to acclimate fully, so that's not like that weird. But yeah, 4 is a little extreme. Tyra or Cop? Still Tyra. I was so scared when Volk went for the ghillie. Yeah, I don't know what he was doing there, to be honest. That was just... I understand his thought, like there's 30 seconds left, why not do it? But I still was not a fan of that, strategically speaking. Ellen versus Lopez. Ellen would school him. Oh, Van versus Cop? I'd lean towards Van right now. Do you think the UFC makes Van fight Tyra Van? I assume you mean Cop, not Van. But fight Tyra, Cop, or Pantoja. I think they'll just do Pantoja, since it seems like he's back training already. Thoughts on Iwo Baraneski? I mean, he's fun. I mean, he just can't fight like he fought against Aslan every time. Fighting nerds are coming back very well. Yeah, I mean, sometimes losing is good for very good fighters, because they need a wake-up call to improve a little. If Ilya loses to Islam at 170, would it be because of size or skill? I mean, I'd have to see it to tell you. I never get people complaining about WMMA. The heavyweight is so much worse. Yeah, I agree. We've been having more finishes in WMMA than heavyweight. Like, WMMA has been a lot more fun. Really, I think even on the feet, Charles Moggs BSD. I don't think so, because Charles also does not love striking on the back foot, and BSD, I assume the game plan would be put Charles on the back foot and just get in the pocket with elbows. And Charles is not the most durable, so I think that the elbows could really be a problem for him. Early pick on BMF fight. I'm very 50-50 on that one. I have to do tape study. The only person with a chance to beat Charles by grappling is Arman. Even Islam only beat Charles because he's a better striker. Um, Even then, I mean, Charles mostly outgrappled Arman. He did get held down for some times, but like in terms of submissions, of course, Charles would have finished him if Arman didn't get very lucky with the short slip. I think Volk went to the Gilly because he was just having fun and wanted a Dustin moment. Yeah, I get it. It just probably wasn't the wisest, especially since he gave his backup right after, but I get what you mean. Early prediction on obscure fight, Elijah Smith versus Su Young Yu. I do have to watch tape. I might, like, off instinct lean towards you, though. People low-key glaze Ilya for getting the crucifix. Charles put him in a leg lock 1 second later. Yeah, I mean, that didn't mean anything, in my opinion, the crucifix. Hooker throws counters like he's looking for his glasses. Very strange. Yeah, Hooker can't really fight off the back foot. Is it really possible to put Charles on the back foot as of right now? I think for someone like BSD, it might be. I think it is very feasible. Arman beat Charles by striking. I think round 2, kind of, or round 3 even. I thought Charles was doing better on the feet, honestly. How do you think Lopez would do at 155? He'd get knocked out. It's a bit ironic how those boxing heavy Mexican fighters are incapable of cutting the cage. Lopez can't, Grasso can't, Aldana can't. Yeah, that camp is just terrible. Yeah, I agree, but Arman at least has a chance. Fair. Jacoby Smith versus Ko. I'm leaning Ko. But Charles won't allow himself to get backed up. BSD isn't going to counter Charles when Charles goes for the 1-2, crashing into him. Well, the thing is that BSD is going to try to basically walk through it. And maybe he gets stunned, but he probably just puts up the high guard, semi-deflects it, and then just keeps running for it with hooks and elbows. Let's go. I'm winning against Elijah Smith, hopefully. What changed your mind on Ilya because you weren't that high on Ilya a year ago? I think it was more than a year at this point. I mean, Ilya's a strange style for me to think about because his style is very, he has very few weapons, which I interpreted as a problem, and to some extent I still do. But I think I am realizing the more time goes by, sometimes having very few weapons that you just have completely mastered is more efficient than having a deeper set of skills that you just aren't quite as good at putting together in the correct manner. So I think once I realized how much Ilya has mastered, like the 4 weapons he uses, I was like, okay, fair enough. You can definitely make that work. Mumbai versus Moreno. Definitely Moreno. I think Arlen's would have done better than Lopez. Is it just me? No, I agree with you. I think Allen might have gotten to a very close decision with Volk and may have taken it. I don't know. You're the man that has practiced the same shot 1,000 times or something. Yeah, pretty much. Thoughts on Yuri versus Bogdan Guskov? Yuri should kill him. Who are your top 5 goats? Honestly, I'd have to think about it more. Thinking about it offhand is always a tough question. I think when you talk about wake-up calls, maybe this fight was the wake-up call for Lopez. He has good physicality and decent idea of everything, but lacks the fine details needed. I feel like if there was going to be a wake-up call for Lopez, it would have been the first loss to Volk. Because this loss wasn't like, oh, it's a wake-up call, you just need to work on X, or you need to just change your mentality a bit, or something like that. This was like, no, you are massively outskilled in pretty much every single way. Is Alex above Khabib all time? Yeah, I mean he's a what's it called? He's a double champ who I believe has more title defenses than Khabib, so yeah, for sure. What fight are you on now? Are you already done with the fights? Oh, I already went through all of them, yeah. Lopez needed the wake-up talk 2 fights ago. Yeah, exactly. Thoughts on Mirzakhanov? He's really good. He's definitely underrated. Are we cashing big against Quinn and Sulkield next fight? Yeah, hopefully he gets what's his name? Ziam. And then we can just absolutely like load up on Ziam. How do you think Volk versus either Murphy or Mob Zargos. I think Volk beats both, but I could see a Murphy fight being close. I also think Allen couldn't have beat Volk. He has this weird tendency of freezing. Possibly, but it would have been closer than this in my opinion. Vallejos versus Lopez. Honestly, I'd probably lean towards Vallejos. All right, I'm probably going to wrap up here. Don't want to do a full length stream, or we're just going to start getting into like topics from next stream and stuff. But I appreciate you guys coming. I hope you guys had fun with the card, and I hope everyone who did bet money was up. Again, if you guys are not in the betting Discord, we did ridiculously well tonight. Default strategy was up 16.5 units. Most of us were up far more than that. So the link is in my Instagram bio. Always feel free to DM me if you're having questions accessing it. And hopefully we'll have a better or more entertaining next event, because I feel like this one could have been a little bit better. And yeah, I'll see you guys probably on Thursday or Wednesday. I'll let you know if the day changes for the breakdown of the next event. Have a good night, everyone. I'll see you guys soon.